you worked in the Spokane wine industry?
It's been 11 or 12 years.
And where all of you worked?
I started at Catarina Winery when Mike Scott was the winemaker. Moved to Arborcrest and started their wedding program. And meanwhile, was still waiting for Don Townsend to be ready for somebody full time. And he finally was about 2.5 years ago. So that's how long I've been at Townsend Cellar.
So you've got a great perspective of kind of not necessarily the beginning, but you've had a nice career in the Spokane wine industry and a great background.
I have, and it's been fun to watch it change and grow throughout the years. We started Taste Washington when I was at Catarina Winery, and it was a concept that was developed because the original committee, steering committee, was WSU, Journal of Business, Catarina, Arborcrest, and the Spokane Convention and Visitors Bureau. And that was the original core committee that started Taste Washington Spokane, which back the first year was called Taste of the Columbia because we weren't branded yet with the Washington Wine Commission. The concept was so great because originally Taste Washington Seattle was in the Paramount Hotel, and it was set up so that there was a winery with 2 restaurants, and you would submit a wine, and the wine was tasted with the 2 wines from 2 different wineries that was supposed to be ideally paired, and it was a bite-sized portion. And it was such a great concept that consumers could get a taste of a wine that was paired well with a food item. And nobody was doing it in Spokane. And the committee that met was here because the Washington Wine Commission had presented the economic impact on the Washington grape growers and the wine industry. And we all decided here in Spokane, why does it have to be just in Seattle? We have great restaurants here in Spokane and east of the mountains. So we actually decided to launch that event. We came together as a committee and formed it, and the event came together very quickly and was very successful the first year. We held it at the Fox Theater right before it was mothballed, and we had 20 wineries and 10 restaurants, and it was great, except that they had just turned the air conditioning off the few days before we launched the event. It was very, very hot. People never let me live it down for years, but the concept was great, and it had the feeling of the Paramount Theater. And so we decided to see if the Davenport would support that, and that's why we moved to the Davenport Hotel. And Walt and Karen Worthy were incredibly supportive, and that's why we moved here, because we really felt that this created the ambiance that the Paramount didn't have, or the Paramount did have, and we didn't want to go to the Ag Trade Center. We haven't moved it to that type of a venue because that really changes the event, and we love the atmosphere here, and I think that just speaks so much for Spokane. Oh, it was great. I was there at the Paramount, and I loved it there. And you do have such a different feeling. It's so much more intimate. When you go into an Ag Trade Center, you go into a trade center environment, and you change the nature of the environment of the event. And it's colder. You're always on concrete. This is the most beautiful hotel, as the Paramount Theater was. The problem is that we have so many, it's not a problem, we have so many great wineries in Washington now. So even for this event, we've had to cut it back to 100 wineries. So it's a first come, first serve. Instead of saying everyone can be in, we've decided to limit it. And that's the thing every year that we evaluate. Should we grow the event and move to an Ag Trade Center, or should we keep it here? There's pros and cons. I personally love it here, and I always miss the Paramount. I just think that bigger isn't always better. Spokane clientele are different than Seattle clientele. We all love the Davenport, and it makes it a dressy event. It's fun.
And yet there are a number of Woodinville wineries here tonight.
Absolutely. It's truly a first come, first serve. It reaches, for the people that aren't here local, it reaches a different market. Spokane consumers are definitely very much Washington wine consumers, so it gives everybody a chance to taste some other wine other than just local.
Okay. Now, I noticed the Coeur d'Alene Cellars is here. What are the stipulations for a winery that's not in Washington to be able to
Well, they're using Washington fruit. So even though, it's kind of, and we're fine with with usually Beverly's has been here. We're okay with bringing in, just because Coeur d'Alene, Spokane is such a run together. We've had restaurants from Coeur d'Alene, but Coeur d'Alene Cellars is getting their fruit from Washington. As a person who works in a tasting room, I hear all year long now people looking forward to Taste Washington Spokane. So I think it's branded itself, and I really thank the commission for taking us under their name, because I think Taste Washington has a name now that consumers recognize more than Savor the Columbia would have. So
this is the 7th year for Taste Washington Spokane, and again it just continues to get better and better, and it's really a great opportunity for wineries who may be a little more intimidated of being at Taste Washington Seattle as their first time event. So this is an opportunity to introduce themselves to the community and to the public and to the industry and get their feet wet. So we have a number of new wineries here today.
How would you contrast Taste Washington Spokane with Taste Washington Seattle?
Well, there's a number of differences. First of all, just the sheer size of number of attendees. Our Seattle event in Taste Washington attracts about 3,000 or more consumers every year. But Spokane, we are sold out this year, which has been pretty typical for the last recent events. And by just sheer fact that the hotel can only hold so many people. But it's a wonderful venue. The Davenport Hotel, what's there not to like about this? It just really speaks to, you know, the overall image, I think, of the Washington wine industry, which is very elegant and hospitable, and it's just a fun event for us.
Well, it's getting to know client feedback, what all the different tastes are, and we're looking also at expanding into local markets. Shipping right now is very challenging outside of the state, so a small winery, we can distribute inside the state and do well with that. And it also gives me a chance to talk to a lot of the winemakers. We don't get off hours, and here we get to taste everybody's wines, talk about fruit and process and motivation. You know, it's kind of like colleagues in a football convention get together, coaches and talking, and so that's kind of the whole evening. And it's a lot of fun. It's a short event. It's about 3 hours long, and we get to see people who've had different tastes and exposed to a totally different environment and what they're looking for in grapes. It has a real different feel. I mean, we're at the Davenport. It's an extremely high-end hotel, and because of that, it's a Sunday evening too, which is a little different context than a Saturday or early afternoon Sunday event. And so I think people have on their Sunday best, and you kind of feel that right from the beginning. And so as a winemaker, we're kind of responding to that formality. It's almost a step up in elegance, and that kind of feels neat as a winemaker to pour when you're surrounded by mahogany windows and people running around in their butler outfits.
Right.
Yeah, I think when it's like if you're shopping for a wedding venue, you feel a sense of elegance, a sense of comportment, and everybody changes at a little slower pace. You don't feel that you're in a large convention space where you have to do 40 wineries. Each room, there's several rooms here, and each room has an intimate feel. They're salted with a couple of restaurants, and so it's just a kind of a slower, easier going, and it kind of reflects Spokane versus Seattle lifestyle. So in that sense, it's a lot of fun to come here.